Hello, and welcome to the Designing with Love podcast. I am your host, Jackie Pellegrin, where my goal is to bring you information, tips, and tricks as an instructional designer. Hello, GCU students, alumni, and fellow educators. Welcome to episode 50 of the Designing with Love podcast. Today, I have the pleasure of interviewing Dr. Dana Goodier, an educational consultant, author, and a podcast host. Welcome, Dana.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for coming, Dana. I appreciate you taking your time to come onto my show today. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
So I've been in education for 25 years. I started out teaching French for about 13 years, and then I taught a bit of English. French was mostly at the high school. English was at the middle and high school. And I've also taught some English as a second language. I've done a variety of admin roles, like dean of students, and also multi-tiered systems of support coordinator, behavior interventionist, and so that's like my day job. And then the podcasting is something I've been doing since 2020. It's a windy road in education for a lot of educators. So I went with the theme out of the trenches because a lot of educators find themselves in several trenches throughout their careers. So I wanted to give them a space to tell their stories. And I also wrote a book, The Trenches, Stories of Resilient Educators. So I know I'm going to be talking a little bit about trench stories and educational trenches. Another thing about me is I've spoken professionally for about 8 years now, and I speak often at conferences, but I'm available for different consulting opportunities as well.
That's great. So you keep yourself busy in the field of education and then consulting and then with your podcast too. So it sounds like you're able to give so much insight and learn what's going on out in the field. So that's great. I love that. It's always good to kind of keep an eye on what's going on and see how you can help fellow educators in that. So that's great. I love it. So what's your definition of being in the educational trenches, as you mentioned with your book?
So it's really that tough period of time where somebody is questioning whether they should stay in education. And I know that there have been a lot more educators who've left education since the pandemic, but I think even as long as I've been in education, there are things that are tough for educators. And, there's often the fact that educators leave within the first 3 to 5 years of teaching if they don't get that support. The trenches I've been in, they haven't been easy at the time, but it's that philosophy of whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger, right? It's a learning experience, right? And it's really important during those trenches to have a support system. And that support system might not be at your school. It might be through virtual meetups with other educators. It might be through some type of a network or professional organization. It might be, just doing the hobbies or workout activities somebody likes to do. But if somebody's in a trench, it's making sure they're not living and breathing their job, because that trench could be caused by being overworked as well.
That's so true. Yeah. It can lead to burnout and everything else. And so in the helping professions, as they call it, and I believe that teaching is in that area, I often work on curriculum for counseling and social work, and they talk about compassion fatigue and burnout and how it's important to have that self-care. So even for teachers and educators, that's just as important, right? To have that self-care and so that they don't face that burnout and everything, because it's what you're doing is a service. And that's something that even students in my class, we talked about this. There's a discussion question that talks about servant leadership. And with GCU being a Christian university, it comes into like the human flourishing aspect and that servant leadership and all of that. And so it's amazing because a lot of my students are currently educators in K through 12 education. So they talk about how it's a calling for them and they're honored to do it, but it does it does weigh on you after a while. So being able to reach out, ask for help, know that there's a network out there that can help you. Like you said, even if it's not in the school itself, but knowing that there's a network out there that can be there to support them. They may not know it's out there. So that's important to have that. Yeah, absolutely. So it's great that you're there providing that support, doing conferences to speak about it and get that awareness out there, and know that there's, even though there may be a stigma, that it's okay to ask for help, right? Yeah, that's great.
And I think leaders and others, veteran educators who might be a teacher support person, those people are much more aware that there are educators who get burnt out and that need to take some time for themselves. I think that's really evolved in the last 5 to 10 years. I don't think that was so much the case when I started in education, because, there were people who left, but it was more just, you do your job and whatever it takes kind of attitude, I think. So,
right.
But I'm glad it's being more recognized now.
Yes, that's important. And we talked a little bit about networking. So in your experience, what's the value of networking with other educators on social media?
So, there's a variety of places people can network. Twitter, now X, used to be that place through Twitter chats. People moved over to Blue Sky, and there's some of that going on there. A lot of networking I've had is through just being part of like a podcast network and a place where people can access professional development. It's called Teach Better Team. I got connected with them 5 years ago. So there's blogs there. I've written blogs. There's many other people that write blogs. And then there's podcasts, about 45, including mine. And, they do have some professional development events, either some live like webinars, or sometimes they've had these 12-hour lives where they have different guest speakers for 12 hours straight. They had a couple of conferences a couple of years ago. And so I think that's a good way to do like online networking. But also, the social media piece in terms of if you are part of an organization that might be a state organization, that's something that I'm responsible for as president of Colorado Congress for Language Teachers, trying to get the word out there to help promote conferences that we're holding or other professional development events. And we've learned that, not everybody interacts with the social media. So trying to get that sent through email blasts and also word of mouth if there's people in leadership positions in different districts in the state, that they can also send out emails to their people that might be part of the organization as well. So it really depends on social media where people access that. And people are part of Facebook groups, but there's also a lot of people who are on Instagram or TikTok nowadays. So it's really kind of evolved. And I think you just have to find where you get most analytics of interaction from the people you're trying to reach.
Yeah. So the marketing, going across different platforms and different methods is really a key there, because you don't want to just segment just one area, but you want to make sure you broaden it out and can target the audience that you need to and meet them where they're at, right? And make sure that they have what they need. If they're, like you said, if they're not on social media that much, but they check their email or they do good with word of mouth, you could always get little flyers out there or something, digital flyers or something, say, hey, this is coming up, and make sure if you can, to come. So that's great. Yeah. It's really nice having those networks. They have that for instructional design too, on like LinkedIn and stuff like that. So it's really nice to have those available, and they have closed groups that are there too. So it's nice to have some of those opportunities where, it's a little bit more exclusive and you can get some hands-on type of support as well. So that's great. Yeah, I love that. And that you're able to champion for that and be there for them. So that's great. So as we know that sometimes women have unique challenges of being leaders in today's educational climate, what do you think are some of those challenges that particularly women like us face in today's educational climate?
I think there are often like principals at the elementary level, sometimes at the middle and high school level, but not as often. So I think that's also just getting more principals at the secondary level. I also think in terms of like district leadership, because that's where I'm most familiar with, K-12 school systems. So there aren't enough women leaders, in my opinion, in district leadership for the organization. I also think giving more people who are maybe in a teaching role leadership opportunities, whether it's chairing committees, whether it's starting different, it could be clubs or other things for students to maybe fundraise or something like that. A lot of the time the leaders have to find that themselves, right, and advocate for it. I think some challenges also could be that family and home balance. It's traditionally still, unfortunately, the mom who has to get the kids a lot, and be there and pick up the groceries. So I think that's sometimes an issue when there's maybe not an equal balance in spousal responsibilities, and if there is a female leader who has a lot more obligations, maybe later in the day. They can't always be at some of those school events or pick up their kids from school. It can be a challenge. So, and I think also just for women leaders getting the opportunity to speak, or for me, I've always put out my name and sent the proposals in and, contacted places to speak at. But I think some people need that somebody recognizing that they are able to share what they have to share. So I think that's something I'd like to see more of in leadership conferences, more women who maybe don't have as much speaking experience, but have a lot to share, who'd like to get into the speaking profession.
That's a great idea, because that's something that another guest that was on my show mentioned to me after we talked. He said, I can send you information about someone that can help you get like a good social plug for conferences, and then you can start off doing virtual ones and then you can get paid for them. And I'm like, well, that's a really good idea. And it's something I've always thought of in the back of my head, but now it's with you talking about it too. It's kind of brought it to the forefront of my mind. So I'm like, yeah, that would be nice to be able to do that and share some of that information, especially being in education for so long, in higher education, and being able to share some of that. And then I see, leaders within the university going to conferences and coming back. And I'm like, that would be really unique. And I think it adds to the depth of someone's experience. And especially for women, they can add that to their resume or their CV and be able to, incorporate that and then get more speaking engagements, like you said, and have that opportunity to really have their voice heard and advocate for the students as well. So that's important. Yeah. And advocate for the profession, right, as a whole, as well. Yeah.
Yeah. It's always good to hear from people at conferences who are in the trenches and working with the students, because there are a lot of people who are full-time speakers and consultants who do the work and speak at conferences and might lead those sessions. But for me, I can tell a lot of the time who's actually doing the work, and who knows those stories from what they're currently doing, as opposed to somebody who might have just learned about a certain thing that they're trying to sell to schools as a training platform, and they're just kind of going through the motions. Right. So there's a lot to be said for people who have that hands-on experience.
Right, that's true. Instead of, like you said, the people that are constantly in it all the time, and it becomes probably repetition for them. They just get so entrenched in it, right, and it just becomes second nature for them. But for those that you want that fresh perspective, I think that can be valuable for that, to have that fresh look and perspective at things, for sure. Yeah, I like that. That's great. Yeah. Are there any other challenges you think, like especially today, with the landscape with technology? Do you see that it can be challenging with the way technology keeps evolving now with AI? I mean, it's all over the place. Our policy at the university has recently changed, and so I'm sure K through 12 is facing that too, with making sure that there's that ethical part of it and integrity and things like that if students are using it as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of the time it's the organization who has to figure out what kind of policy they're going to use. And a lot of schools throughout the U.S. in different states and districts have, last year, a lot of them, it was in the news, adopted a cell phone policy finally, like district wide, which it was like about time. I mean, how long have we had the smartphone, right?
Right.
But now, like where I'm at, they're using Yonder pouches. So the phones are locked up in these pouches and the kids can't access them during the day. But so I do think, okay, that was an initiative a year ago, and, it's working because now we don't have kids who are constantly on their phone during class. But then the next thing is also developing policies, especially at the high school level, because that'll feed into university level, because there are a lot of kids at the high school level, because I've taught English at high school, who are trying to, use ChatGPT or whatever AI to do their assignments.
Right.
And, it's not always easy for teachers to be able to figure that out. Right. So,
yes.
So I think, it needs to be a school-wide or district-wide policy. And, having kids learn more academic integrity. There's one thing getting past that plagiarism piece, like having kids understand that that's not right. But also, if you're asking AI to write a paper for you, I mean, instead of you writing a paper and asking for some grammar, feedback, or asking, for maybe an outline, which could be an AI tool, but, a lot of those kids just do the whole paper. So.
Hello, I have some exciting news to share with all of my listeners. There is a feature called Fan Mail. What this allows you to do is send me a text message anytime during the episode. There's a link located at the top of the description in each episode, and it says Send Jackie a Text Message. So when you click on that link, you'll be able to send me a message letting me know what you thought about the episode, and if you have any ideas for future episode content as well. I look forward to seeing your text messages. Thank you. Yeah, it's challenging. Yeah, for sure. And at the university level, it's tough because there's some instructors that they're like, they want to police it. And I'm like, but in the job, I mean, I've actually talked to some in the industry and asked them and so have others in other areas, and they're asking them, what do you want the students to be able to do once they graduate? Is that part of being able to, sit for a job interview and say that they can use this tool and different tools like ChatGPT? And they said, yes, it's a essential thing. So, we're trying to figure out, I think we have pretty much, but just knowing that there's that limitation, but yet giving them the tools that they need to know how to use it ethically, like you said, and that academic integrity and digital literacy, things like that. So very important. So they're starting to implement this stoplight method where it's green is like, yes, you can use it. And here's the parameters in the assignment where they explicitly say you can use it. And then there's the yellow, which is like, yes, but with limitations. And then the red is like, no, you cannot use it for this assignment because we want to know that you can actually do the work, and we can see that the content and you're not utilizing something else to supplement that. So it's good to see that there's that the districts are doing that and they're trying to implement that. So yeah, that's great. Yeah, it's funny about the cell phone policy because I saw that I read an article about that they said 31 states have implemented that with the policy, and I'm like, it should be all across, right? But yeah, they showed a map and they showed pretty much all of the Western states in the plains, and then a little bit, not too much in the east as much. The East Coast doesn't really have it as much. So it seems like our side of the country, the West Coast, we've adopted it sooner, and then hopefully the East Coast will catch up. But yeah, it was very interesting to see the map it was pretty much yellow on the one half of the United States, and then the other not quite. So yeah, I thought that's interesting.
Yeah.
It's usually it's like East and West Coast, and then it all comes together. But yeah, I thought it was kind of unique for sure.
But as I said, it took long enough. Like, it's like, kids have had the phones for years and they've lost instructional time. And now that there's all this research on like, social emotional, like there's been research. Right. There's been bullying, all this, stuff that's coming from cell phones. But like, it took them that long to finally realize, okay, maybe we need to do something as a system about it.
Right. I'm hoping that it doesn't take that long for AI to come around. And
it's evolving so fast, and schools aren't keeping up with it.
Right. That's true. Yeah. So hopefully they can wrap their minds around it a little bit more, and because as they say, the cat's out of the bag and can't put it back in once it's out. It's not, as they say, it's not going anywhere. So yeah, that's true. So are there any tips and advice that you'd like to share with those who are currently in the instructional design program that I teach at Grand Canyon University, or just maybe even in general, since instructional design is an education type of industry as well?
Mm-hmm. Really, I think just knowing your audience, knowing what the outcomes are, looking at the bigger picture first, and scaffolding, it's like you would do for a lesson for kids, right? You want to make sure you have different ways of teaching it for different learners. Making sure also that everything, like if you're building an online course, for example, you don't always want to have the same set of types of assignments. I think, that's something that can get a little bit repetitive, but if you're looking for different things from different, students for a variety of reasons, you want to vary up the types of assignments and also the expectations of what you would want students to do. So I think it's really, keeping the expectations clear, but also, serving different learning needs, visual, auditory, or kinesthetic learning, which sometimes if you're teaching online, it's not easy for kinesthetic, but you could also incorporate maybe an activity where, a student's out in nature, using something that they find out in nature and writing about it or something like that, right? There are opportunities to teach to all those learning styles.
Right. That's so important. Yeah. That authentic assessment. I worked on courses before I opened it up, like a psychology course, and it was 8 topics, 8 papers all throughout. And I thought, wow, not only is that daunting and boring for the students, but for the faculty that have to grade those, I can't imagine having a paper, and they were like 500 to 750 word. And then some of them were larger. And so by the time I think it got to topic 7, they were up to like 2,000 words. And I'm thinking, wow, talk about burnout. By the end, they would not want to write anymore after that. And I wouldn't want to be the instructor grading those either. 8 with 8 papers. So that's tough. So that's great. And the scaffolding, that's definitely important as well. Yeah, at any level, right? And being able to do that. Yeah. That's great. Yeah, I love that, because that's something that we advocate for. And that authentic assessment can be so helpful, especially with AI, right? Being able to, go beyond what a paper, and giving them something that they can do that's more authentic and real world that they'll face as well. So that's important. Yeah, kind of helps with both. Being able to do that. Yeah, absolutely. That's great. Yeah. Is there anything else you can think of that would be good advice, for this the type of role? Because I know in K through 12, usually, sometimes they're called them instructional designers. Sometimes they refer to them as curriculum coaches, but kind of in that realm, right, of being able to to help with curriculum and professional development and those types of things. This is a lot of my students like to do, and what they want to go into is helping more with professional development, training, and being able to help with the curriculum areas. It's really, really exciting to see that.
Yeah, I think, for students who might be going into working on, professional development for adults, it's really knowing that sometimes if you're working with teachers, sometimes they can be the worst students. And the teachers don't always appreciate some of the types of activities like, going around and writing on, putting sticky notes on chart paper and those types of things. There's different things that can be done, and just making sure that you're using your time wisely. Like, I was at a professional development today that they had a 3.5 hour time slot, but it only took them half that time. But then they didn't want you to let people out so early. So for about 45 minutes of the extra time, people were just sitting there work with your school on how you're going to implement this. But we don't know when it's going to be implemented. So, a lot of the time it's also knowing how much time things are going to take versus keeping people because they're supposed to fulfill a certain amount of hours,
right?
So,
that continuing education, yeah.
So just I would say be respectful of people's time, but also give them activities that they might be able to complete at home or via some type of assignment that's going to be asynchronous and due a week or two later, or something like that. Because
that's a good idea.
It's good for if you're doing a course for teachers to do some independent work as well, or come back after they've implemented it in the classroom and had a little bit of time to think about it.
That's a great idea. Doing more blended approaches where, where they can do maybe some pre-work before they come in to the in-person portion, do that. And then, as you mentioned, do some of it at home, or be able to do a call to action, where that's what we do in a lot of our professional development. We'll give them a call to action, and then 30 days later, we'll follow up. We'll do a 30-minute follow-up session, and we'll say, okay, how have you implemented this? What are you doing? Share some, some stories, some feedback, and then they can ask questions and things like that. So breaking it up a little bit more instead of having one long 2-hour session, it really helps, because then people are so, as we know, educators are so busy. So being able to, like you said, respect that time and make it valuable for them, and then they don't complain about it, right? And go, that was a waste of my time. And I don't want to do that ever again. And some of my students have mentioned that before. They're like, I went to there's a discussion question in one of the classes, and it talks about what was the experience that was either just wasn't effective, or you think could be changed, and what would you do to change it as far as training or professional development? And they really go into that. So it's very interesting to hear their stories and kind of read it and know that, they experience it too. So that's interesting for sure. Yeah, that's good advice. Absolutely. I like that. Great. Is there anything else you wanted to share with the listeners? Anything else that comes to mind?
Well, I mentioned my book, Out of the Trenches, Stories of Resilient Educators. That's available on Amazon. And, even if your students aren't going into, teaching roles, it's really that type of book where you're thinking about the role that you're doing within even edu adjacent, what instructional design is.
Right.
And, exploring the why, what got you into that, and after, a year or two, or if you're in a trench, asking yourself, is this still fulfilling your why? And, exploring, maybe, if you're writing for a certain audience, maybe consider writing for a different audience for a while, right? You could be writing for elementary ed as opposed to adult ed, and that's still developing curricula. So I think there are definitely tips and there's different talking points, and it's a type of a workbook where people can ask themselves and discuss questions with colleagues. So definitely pick that up. People can listen to my podcast, Out of the Trenches. I know you have my YouTube channel linked, and you can also access them on Apple wherever you get your podcast. There's a new episode every week. And just follow me on social media. And if you have any questions about, maybe getting into K-12 instructional design and professional development, but not quite sure how to go about it, just send me a message and I'll try to help you, answer your questions about, getting into that space.
That would be great. I love that. Thank you, Dana. I appreciate that because that's a good point, because a lot of my students, when they get their portfolio put together, if they're in K through 12 or they're in corporate or higher ed in some capacity, especially my students that are in K through 12 education, their artifacts and their projects tend to be focused on that area that they're in. And I always let them know, you need to have a diversified portfolio, because if you're going to apply for jobs, I mean, instructional design is so varied. It can be in anything from K through 12, corporate, military, nonprofit. So they have to be able to think outside of that realm of what they're in. And so I always mention to them, go outside your comfort zone a little bit. It's kind of what you mentioned, and be able to do that. So that's great. I love that. Thank you so much. And I'll make sure to link everything in the show notes, so that way everybody has that. And that's great. You have your podcast that comes out every week too. So it's great to know that there's educational podcasts out there that are serving the community. I love it. Great. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today. And I look forward to having my listeners gain some great insight and picking up your book as well.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you, Dana. Appreciate it. Thank you for taking some time to listen to this podcast episode today. Your support means the world to me. If you'd like to help keep the podcast going, you can share it with a friend or colleague, leave a heartfelt review, or offer a monetary contribution. Every act of support, big or small, makes a difference, and I'm truly thankful for you.